I'm Ariel Azor, host of Right This Way, and today we're going to talk about the 2020 election. Now that it's actually 2020, we're going to see the presidential election coming up in November, so it's not even a year away at this point, which is really exciting, probably for a lot of people that want to vote President Trump out of office, and maybe even exciting for people who want to vote for him again or for the first time because they're seeing what a great job he's doing and they really have support for our president. And I want to talk today a lot about the Democratic candidates because I think I've made it very, very clear what my stance is on our current president. And I think for a lot of people probably watching my podcast, a lot of my viewers probably are thinking the same way that I do. And if you're able to vote, you're probably going to vote the same way. So I just want to talk a little bit about the Democratic candidates to sort of give some insight about what's happening there. Maybe if you have friends or family who are planning to vote Democrat, who have voted Democrat in the past, anything like this, if this is something you'd like to share with them, do that because we're really just going to dive into these candidates and talk about what's happening here. We're going to talk about voting. We're going to talk about your responsibility as a Christian, a Catholic, anything sort of religious, I would say in general, how you should be voting based on your religion, things like that. And so let's start with that actually, because I feel like that's sort of controversial. I think a lot of people like to say, well, being a Democrat or a Republican, it has nothing to do with your religion. You don't only have to be a conservative because you're a Christian. Now, I agree with that to an extent. You don't have to be a conservative to be a Christian. You don't have to be a Democrat to be a Christian. Being a Democrat doesn't mean you can't be a Christian. But being a far left liberal who wholeheartedly supports all different kinds of abortion, any abortion, I would say, but especially these late-term abortions and all of those things, because even if you don't agree with science, even if you don't agree that that baby's life is a human life, at some point, right, you'd think you would. They can live outside the womb. So, there's just so many different aspects to that I think as Christians, as Catholics, that I think is a huge pull away from religion. I think that's what their point is, that, we shouldn't agree with this. We shouldn't believe in this. Let's just get them further and farther away from it. Now, I would say this also extends into gay marriage. Now, what I'm going to say, my opinion on this, probably a lot of people don't agree with me. I don't really care. I'm going to talk about it because I do think it's important to talk about these things. I think that the gay agenda, LGBTQ, all of this stuff, I think that at this point, they have the same rights we do to get married and to start families. I mean, legally, they really have all the same rights that straight people do. There's nothing that says a gay person cannot do this because he or she is gay. No law. Now, there are different things, and this is going to go into the religion thing here, is that we're seeing more and more gay people saying, well, I want to be a gay pastor, and like a gay couple saying, I want this church to marry us. Well, if a church, traditionally, most churches do not support being gay, and they don't support gay marriage, and they don't support having gay leaders of the church because they don't support being gay. So at the end of the day, we're seeing more and more people from the LGBTQ community, and even not, I would argue that a lot of the time it's just these social justice warriors, and they're these like feminist ladies with pink hair, and these men that, shave their legs and wear those feminist AF t-shirts is what we're seeing a lot of too, that like these people, you're not even part of the LGBTQ community. You're fighting for something that nobody ever asked you to fight for. So that's what's sort of challenging to actually like pull that apart, because I think a lot of young people say, well, like, oh yeah, we should be supporting that. We should support gay people. Listen, I don't have a problem with gay people. If they want to go get married, they can go get married. I don't care. I think truthfully, in America, your freedom, your right should be to marry whoever you want. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but I don't think that making churches marry you, churches who have a moral religious stand against that should have to marry you. It doesn't make sense. That's not freedom. If you want to get married to somebody, find somebody who wants to marry you too, because there's so many other people that I promise you will marry a gay couple. You can get ordained as a minister online or whatever it is that technically so you can marry people. You can do that online. You pay like $20 or something. So, you can't tell me that that's infringement on your rights, that a church isn't going to marry you. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's actually forcing a church to marry you by law is infringement on their rights. I think that's a big thing that has a lot of young people saying, "Oh, I don't want to vote conservative because I want to support, I have gay friends. I want to support these people." Well, you know what? Conservatives don't not support it. The LGBT community no longer has a need for more freedom, more laws to make them more equal. I think they're equal. I don't think there's anything more to be done. And I think that that's most conservative standpoints at this point in time. We're seeing people asking for regulation on these freedoms. And what conservatives are going to do is fight for those. They're going to fight for those freedoms, fight against that restriction and infringement. If you are a Christian, if you're Catholic, if you're anything religious that believes in not murdering babies and true religious freedom in this country, you should be concerned about this. And now maybe that's not enough to get you to vote conservative. So let's transition and talk a little bit about social programs and the economy, because I think those really wind up going hand in hand. So in college, my first semester, I just finished that up before Christmas, and I had a sociology class. I'm a criminal justice major, so I have a lot of classes that are sort of politics and this sort of thing. And I remember my teacher asked specifically the class, like he said, "What has Donald Trump done for poor people?" And I raised my hand after waiting a good 15 seconds and no one else raised their hand. I raised my hand to give an answer, and I said, well, he created a ton of jobs. And my professor went on for about 10 minutes to explain why I was wrong, why the president of the United States doesn't actually have power to create jobs, and how they just take credit for the economy when it's really good. They take credit for it. You are telling me, you, a college professor, and the entire class, you are telling all of us that the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, does not have the power to create jobs and to have a role in the economy. So the reason I'm saying this is because I think a lot of other young people, these millennial age people that are voting for Bernie and that are supporting Bernie and AOC, and obviously I know she's not running for president, but all of these like socialist ideas, because even Biden he's gone really far left. Warren, they've gone really far left now. Yang, we'll get there. But the young people supporting this, I think that this is sort of what they've learned is these sort of things. And I'm just seeing it now for the first time. I'm starting to like actually understand why these people think the way that they do. But you've been told, no, the president's not responsible for that. He is absolutely responsible for that. If the economy is doing great, if after 3 years, that's the thing. Donald Trump has been in office for 3 years at this point that we're talking about this, and the economy is doing fantastic. The stock market is doing great. Unemployment for Black people is at an all-time low. Explain this to me. If Obama was in office for 8 years and he couldn't do what Donald Trump did in 3, don't we think he's a good president? Don't we think he's doing something good for this country? If you can put aside for 1 second the fact that you hate the man because he's orange or because you think he's a racist or because you just think he's a horrible person, even though you've never met him and you know nothing about him, and the only thing you know about him is what the media wants you to know about him. Even if you think that and you hate him, put that aside for 1 second to look at this country and to not look at the things, these little annoying things that people like to talk about, like with women being oppressed and stuff. We've covered this. And things with gay people not having rights. We just covered this, right? Look at America. This country is so great. that we have so many people that want to come here illegally, legally. We have so many people coming to this country. We have people that said before the 2016 election, if Trump wins the presidency, I'm moving. So many celebrities said this. Do you know how many moved? Literally none. None of them moved because of Donald Trump. Some of them maybe bought houses somewhere else, but they do that all the time. They're celebrities and they live in other places. But nobody said, that said they were doing this, actually moved and left America for good. Why not? Because it's that good of a place to be. We should appreciate that. We should pay attention to that. Look at what's happening. Like I just said, unemployment is so low. It is literally at a record low. It has never, ever been this low for African Americans. And you know who the president is? A white dude, an old white dude. And you know who the president was 3 years ago? For 8 years, a black guy, the first black president. Don't you think that's something he'd want to accomplish if he was capable of it? Of course, but he wasn't. Because he didn't have the economic strategy and business mind that Donald Trump has. People criticized him for not being a politician when he was first running, and I think even now they still do with the Twitter and things like that. He's not a politician, but don't we know by now? I mean, I'm 18 years old, and I know how corrupt politicians are and how corrupt politics in general is. This man's not a politician. I want to talk for a minute also about some of the candidates in particular. We'll start with Bernie because I've already mentioned him more than once, I think. Bernie is a socialist through and through. Democratic socialism is just their made up word because you're either a Democrat or you're a socialist. Democratic socialism is this weird, they tell you it's this weird, murky in between, but there really is no in between. I think that being a Democrat is similar to socialism, but there's less, make everybody totally equal. There's less of that idea there. And so really, democratic socialism, it's just not, it's their nice word. They think people might be scared by him being a socialist, so they use this nice word. But what's really scary is that enough people are agreeing with that, accepting it. Oh, he's just a democratic socialist. Enough people are saying that he is actually running with the other Democratic candidates because, in our elections, we have a Republican candidate and a Democratic candidate. And then we always have an independent, but they never do very well. They get less than 10% of the vote almost always. So really, he should be running as an independent because he's not one of the main two parties. But this is where I'm going with this, is that people aren't saying that. This is the Democratic shift, and this is what I think hurt Democrats in 2016, is picking the wrong candidate. If the Democrats pick a socialist as their candidate, they're not going to win. There's enough older people in this country that have seen socialism firsthand, fled from it, witnessed it, friends, family, things like that, or have even just watched it happen in another country, watched what it's done. There's enough people that are going to say, well, I cannot vote for this candidate. That's why I don't think Bernie has any chance. Bernie had a heart attack already, and I'll point out, had socialized medicine like Canada and Europe been implemented in America, Bernie probably wouldn't have made it. Instead, he got very fast care, very fast, immediate care, and he was fine. But again, he's really old. He's 78. That's really, really old to be running for president. It's a stressful, incredibly stressful job. Speaking of stressful, let's talk about Joe Biden. Biden was Obama's vice president, so he was in the White House just 3-4 years ago. For the last 8 years, he was in the White House as VP. Now, these Democrats, especially Biden, like to talk about all the stuff they've done. And at the end of the day, it's really nothing to be proud about, especially the fact that he was vice president for 8 years and he really doesn't have anything super great to talk about that he did and accomplished. And not to mention, the energy with all of these candidates is really, really low. Biden is creepy. So creepy. I mean, if you haven't seen any of these things, just look up creepy Joe Biden. I'm sure you'll find something. There's so many weird things, all those memes of him like sniffing people, particularly women and children. And that video that surfaced of him talking about how like he would be, I think it was like a hot tub. He would be like in the hot tub with these children and they would like go underwater and he would like tell them to like touch his leg hair. Super weird stuff. This guy is so weird. And the fact that he says these things on camera frequently and people like, you know, nobody on his team, on his campaign is telling him, that's really not okay, Joe. You know, everybody thinks you're a total creep. The fact that nobody's doing this, I think just speaks to what a mess his campaign must be. Because truthfully, like, that is so weird. Everybody thinks this weird. This is weird. Even people that support him, I think these things he's saying are really weird. And I think he's lost a lot of supporters. We saw this week, he is so desperate. He said he would consider, or even like be serious about, he says, having a Republican vice president. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. See, what's funny here is I don't know what he's doing with that. I don't know where he was going. I really honestly don't have any guess because to your Democrats that want to vote for you, you've just said, I'm not really going to be that Democratic. It just doesn't really make sense. Well, speaking of making sense, we should probably talk about Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren is the biggest liar on that campaign stage. And that's really saying something. Elizabeth Warren is constantly lying about her past. She's constantly telling stories about things that she did or that happened to her that were unfair. She's getting caught over and over again. She said her kids did not go to private school, and somebody literally pulled out yearbooks with Elizabeth Warren's kids and their kids and was like, yeah, yes, they did. And then when she was confronted about it, she was like, oh yeah, I forgot. You forgot? You know how much private school costs? You did not forget that you sent your kids there for like 4 years. You didn't forget. So she's constantly caught in these lies and somehow she still has supporters. I have no idea how. Somebody who lies to your face that often, you should really be concerned about what they're doing, not to your face, what they're doing in the shadows. This is another Hillary Clinton. And truthfully, I think that her as a woman and a woman of color, as she likes to say, another lie, she literally uses these things as just something to get ahead, something to put her ahead. And I think that's what she's doing as a woman, is she's saying, you know, I'm a woman. It's time for a woman president. When she said she got fired from her job for being pregnant, she didn't get fired. And they called her out on this too. She said, I just had a baby. I'm going to spend time with my baby and not work this job. She didn't get fired. She chose to leave. And that's the thing is, she's saying, I had a baby, I was discriminated against, and she's trying to make herself relatable, and you're making problems where there are none. You are telling women in this country that they are being discriminated against in the workplace, and you're hurting them, you're harming them, because then they go to work and they act like they're discriminated against, and nobody likes them because they're so annoying. Just go to work and do your job and be the best at it, and you're gonna get promoted. It has nothing to do with your gender. It has everything to do with your work performance. And if you're complaining and if you're threatening to, you know, sue them, or not even that, but just like complain about discrimination in the workplace, that's not going to get you ahead. People are just going to hate you. So with this, I just want to encourage everybody to actually look at these candidates. I think the debates are super boring. I don't encourage you to watch them because they kind of do the same thing every time. They're super rigged. Even now with just the Democrats, they're super rigged. After every debate, they cover how many minutes each candidate gets. And like even where they're placed in the lineup, like the people in the center are the people they ask the most questions, they give the most time to. Those are the people they want. And the people on the outside really don't have a chance because these debates are rigged from the beginning and it's the Democrats rigging them. So I would just encourage everybody to actually like look at what these people believe and actually look at what you believe. Because again, from a religious standpoint, I find it really, really hard to be able to support these candidates. I think in 2020, we're going to see the same thing we saw in 2016. People are tired of the left's lies and manipulation, and they want to see 4 more years of a president who is doing great things for this country, great things for religion in this country, for all people, really. If you enjoyed this episode, you can give me a thumbs up on YouTube, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and you can also check out my Instagram at right.this.way.